any pregnant female mammal, her whole body is filled with estrogens. And human mothers know this. It makes their hair luxuriant, makes their breasts large. It saturates every tissue in the body, including the breast tissue. And so the estrogens get into the milk. And now they're sucking, the modern dairy operations are sucking milk off large, pregnant bovines. And the milk is filled with these estrogens. And as you're implying, these are not the puny little phytoestrogens in soy. These are official mammalian estrogens. They are estrone, estradiol, estriol, pregnadiol, progesterone. These are official mammalian estrogens, and they are biologically active. And they can, in the male body, gives guys man boobs, but more importantly, it makes the prostate gland unstable. It increases the risk of prostate cancer. The more dairy products a boy eats in his young years, the higher his risk of developing prostate cancer as an adult man. Certainly in the female body, it increases the incidence of breast lumps, makes the uterus get big, and the women have heavy periods, and they get these benign tumors called fibroids. They bleed down to anemias, and so the surgeon says, you've got fibroids, and lay down my operating table and take your uterus out. For what? For consuming the milk of a cow. This is bizarre. So yes, they are biologically active estrogens. Unlike the unfair rap that's been given on soy products, they've got phytoestrogens, you're going to make your son gay if you give him tofu, whatever. But it turns out that the phytoestrogens in soy...
Welcome back to the Plant Fuel Podcast. I'm your host, Callum Weir. And if you're new here, this is the place where we try to make sense of health, nutrition, and the absolute circus that sometimes surrounds both. And today's conversation is one that feels very needed right now. Because if you've spent any time looking at the latest dietary guidance coming out of the US recently, you might have noticed something strange. For a country facing some of the highest rates of chronic disease in the world, the advice being pushed around still feels, at best, confusing. And at worst, completely detached from reality. So we're talking about exactly that. My guest is Dr. Michael Klaper, physician, educator, long-time advocate for plant-based nutrition, and someone who spent decades trying to push medicine in a direction that actually prioritizes prevention rather than simply prescribing another pill once things go, wrong. We talk about the new American food pyramid, the politics behind it, and why dietary guidelines can sometimes end up protecting industries rather than protecting people. We dig into the ongoing confusion around soy, the cultural attachment of dairy, and how misinformation around both continues to circulate despite decades of research telling a very, very different story. We also go back to the beginning of Dr. Klaper's journey. His life growing up on a farm, training as a doctor in a system where nutrition education was, let's just say, not exactly the star of the curriculum. And honestly, that's one of the most fascinating parts of this conversation. The reality that many doctors receive shockingly little formal training in nutrition, despite spending their careers treating diseases that are heavily influenced by what people eat every single day. So this episode becomes a much bigger discussion about the future of healthcare, what needs to change, how we move the medicine forward, and why prevention still struggles to compete with profit-driven systems. And now, before we get into it, quick favour. If you enjoy these conversations, hit the subscribe button, follow the show, leave a review, whatever the platform you use allows you to do. It genuinely helps the show grow, and it takes about 3 seconds, which is still less time than most people spend arguing about soy on the internet. To Dr. Michael Klaper. Let's dive in. Peace and plants. Dr. Michael Klaper, welcome. I'm so stoked to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you. It's an honor to be with you and your viewers. Appreciate the opportunity.
So I've been diving into your new book, which congratulations on, by the way. But I think the timing is wildly perfect because while this is obviously moving medicine forward, however, from watching across the pond at the moment, I do feel like what's going on in the US right now, especially in the last month where we've seen a regression with obviously the government effectively reintroducing a version of the outdated food pyramid that kind of double downs on red meat, dairy as a foundation, while simultaneously, I kind of guess, pushing the very things that you've spent 40 years kind of proving are life-saving back to the backwards. So obviously your legumes, your grains, your plant-based proteins. and they're just basically at the back of the queue again.
Oh, it's stunning, eye-watering, jaw-dropping. It's just appalling, and not terribly surprising. However, unfortunately, given the mindset of the people who are now running the U.S. government, and there was an open door for the meat and dairy industry to finally get their revenge against the plant-based trend that has been happening over the last years. Aha, we're in the driver's seat now. You can eat all the meat you want. You can eat all the milk you want. It doesn't matter. The saturated fat is good for you. It's a through the looking glass world, what they're saying. But they're going to have their day. But Mother Nature doesn't care about politics or economics. We are plant eating hominids. Yeah, we thrive on a whole plant food diet. And you feed us the diet of a mountain lion. You have flesh every 2-3 times a day and the milk of a cow. And there's going to be consequences to that. And I'll put $1,000 bill on the table that within certainly 12 months, if not sooner, the articles are going to start showing up in the medical journals. Carnivore diet associated with increased risk of colon cancer, paleo diet increased risk of dementia, and my left eyebrow won't go up that much. Yep, that's what you're going to get. And it'll hit the 6 o'clock news, and suddenly those veggie burgers are going to start looking pretty good, and the pendulum will swing back. But right now, like the Desiderata says, speak your truth quietly and clearly, and just stay with what you know is true in your heart and your mind. And the pendulum will swing back. But you have remarkable times we're living in. I have a file on my computer for things I never thought I'd see. And it started with the Burger King selling Impossible Burgers, whatever, going towards the planet. And now, but here's another one from the other side. Never thought I'd see this, but welcome to the 21st century. And this is what we've got to deal with. But fortunately, it's people like you. We got enough science. We know that plant-based diets lower blood pressure. It's a matter of public education at this point. It's the podcasters and the newscasters that get this word out and educate the public. And so you are right on the forefront of the change that must happen here. So I absolutely jumped at the opportunity for this interview. I really, really appreciate you getting the word out.
Thank you so much. I want to look at the kind of like what if here, I guess. Like, let's say the whole US population actually follows this and kind of leaned into, beef tallow, this red meat, dairy, cutting out all the beans, all the grains. What's really going to happen with obviously the human body? Because obviously we see when we do obviously elimination diets, for instance, that obviously health markers go up for a small amount of time. So obviously, does the health of the nation or the US nation actually improve because obviously they've ditched a load of processed junk, or obviously highly saturated, but also having a lot more highly saturated fat? Is that just then a ticking time bomb? Are we actually kind of moving forward, or just kind of swapping one chronic disease for another, basically?
Oh, absolutely. This is I can hear tick, tick, tick in the background here. Absolutely. The studies there are reams of studies showing that saturated fat increases all-cause mortality. It increases inflammation. It increases artery clogging. We are not meant to eat the stuff. And in nature, a million years ago, the saturated fats are very rare, unless you lived under an avocado tree. There weren't any. Even the game animals that were supposedly hunted then were lean animals. They had very little saturated fat in their muscle tissue. And so the idea that this is now healthful for us, violates natural law. And what's going to happen? Well, it depends which medical specialty starts screaming first, whether it's going to be the emergency physicians screaming about the increased number of people coming in with strokes and heart attacks, whether it's going to be the gastroenterologists complaining about all the Crohn's disease and colitis and bloody stools people are passing, and the cardiologists are going to be screaming about all the increased strokes and heart attacks. There's no question there's going to be repercussions from this, from Mother Nature through the medical community. And we're watching these strange winds blow, but they will stop blowing. But yes, it's that medical disaster is going to be one of the things that swings that pendulum back, and I don't welcome it, but I won't be surprised when we start seeing it show up.
Mm. So I also think there seems to be a huge disconnect as well, like between obviously the clinical reality that obviously you live in, and like obviously the policies that are being pushed to the average person, but also when you do go look into obviously the clinical facilities, there's also doctors promoting carnivore. There's also doctors promoting highly saturated like red meat and various different things. So I think it can be hard for the average person to kind of understand who to look towards.
It's embarrassing to see my colleagues in the medical profession getting on this bizarre bandwagon, and they better start writing their retractions now. I said there was one Paul Saladino was a doctor who was a big carnivore guy. He got so sick with that. You wind up deficient in various vitamins, not enough fiber, etc. It's not. We are plant eating hominids. You deprive us of those vitamins and fiber, you're going to get disease showing up here. And every one of these folks, they're going to publish the big oops editorial. I was wrong. It turned out I've started adding more plants back in, whatever. But there's a whole industry of. We saw it in the old wars with the tobacco industry, where they would hire these public relations agents to where their slogan, doubt is our product. We want to sow doubt in people's mind. Well, science isn't solid yet. And that's what's happening on the internet. And there's all this confusion. A lot of it is intentionally made. But a lot of these, they may be sincere in their beliefs because, well, like my late colleague, Dr. John McDougall said, people love to hear good news about bad habits. You can eat all the steak you want. You can eat all the cheese you want. And so that's percolating in the background, and it is confusing times. It absolutely is. And so again, podcasts like you put a little voice of sanity out there, and that's what we need at this point. So welcome to the 21st century. We've got work to do, but it keeps us busy, keeps us off the street with a tin cup. We got lots of work to do.
You're also probably the fourth, maybe fifth person on this podcast that grew up actually on a dairy farm or a farm that at least had cattle. And there seems to be a trajectory of people that kind of grow up in those kind of conditions or those households and end up going towards a more plant-based lifestyle or a completely vegan lifestyle. So, like, how was that for you? Because obviously you've grown up seeing these things, so that was such I'm guessing, a pivotal part of your growing up.
Yes, back in the 1950s, the great polio epidemic would roll through the American cities, and my mother and father saw all these kids in iron lungs, and my mother had an uncle up in northern Wisconsin who had a dairy farm. So every year when school would get out on June 3rd, on June 4th, we'd be on the train up to Wisconsin. And so I spent my first 16 summers up at my uncle's dairy farm, driving tractors and milking cows and slinging hay bales and doing what a young man does on a dairy farm. And there's a lot of things happening that I didn't really understand, but it's just the way it is, and you want to get the work done. But there was when I walked in the dairy barn, there was always an air of we had 49 cows, and there was always an air of sadness. These cows would stand there being milked, and you'd see tears going down their cheeks. I never understood. Well, now I realize these were all young mothers who just had their babies taken away so that my uncle could suck the milk off of them. This is the reality of dairying. And I can still remember the most painful auditory memory I have in my mind is the sound of a mother cow locked up in a stanchion in the dairy barn. Her newborn calf is in the veal pen 10 yards away from her, where she can't get to nurse. And she would bellow hour after hour, the most painful, soul-tearing, heart-rending bellows because she wants to get to her baby. And it would go on day after day, 3 days, 4 days. I would ask my well, it's just the way it is. She's looking for her calf. And okay. But now I realize the inherent cruelty that's in dairying, and every time someone's shopping, and they take that, put that container of Greek yogurt in your shopping basket, or the Gouda cheese. You're paying someone. Take another calf away from its mother. And those calves, what happens to them? The little boy calf is going to be in a little pen for 4 months and then hung up and get his throat cut and sold for milk-fed veal. The dairy industry is a slaughter industry, which I didn't realize. No dairy cow dies of old age after 4 or 5 years of calves and milk sucked off of them. Their milk production goes down. They become a drain on my uncle's and the dairyman's budget, just shoveling grain into a cow that isn't yielding much. So you call the slaughterhouse truck and they're taken off, and they're shot in the head, and then the flesh stripped from the bones. And because the meat from dairy cows isn't very appetizing in the meat case, it's ground up and sold to the fast food industry. And most people don't realize that when they're in McDonald's eating that Big Mac, what they're really eating is ground up old dairy cows. The fast food industry is the last, this final destination of the dairy industry. And so people say, oh, well, at least in dairying, you don't have to kill the cow. Yes, you do. The dairy industry is a slaughter industry. And the dairy barn is a short stopping off place for a few years of calves and milk, but they all wind up killed and slaughtered, and the meat sold. So, but I didn't realize all the cruelty. It was a great life for if you don't understand the context of it. But boy, I sure understand it now, and I hope more people get this word out, which is what we're doing right now. So thank you for that question. But yes, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who grew up in dairy farm, Dr. Campbell, I grew up on a dairy farm. We realized when we see each other, we share this commonality that we all had when we were young men. That life is funny that way. Life imitates art sometimes.
Was there kind of a pivotal moment for you where it's kind of, was it going into obviously the profession you're in, or is it very much later on down the line you kind of saw the kind of the dairy industry or the meat industry as it was, and then kind of cut out that meat because of obviously studying, or was it just because of something that was more ethical reasons first?
Oh, well, it's quite a story. As I've written in my book, I graduated medical school and went into general practice. And for the first 8 years of my career, I was doing blood and guts medicine, emergency room, operating room, general practice offices. And I thought that would be my total career. But in these 8 years, as an erstwhile GP trying to keep my patients healthy, they're all moving in the wrong direction. They're all getting fatter and sicker, and I'm getting calls to the emergency room that Joe's in with a stroke and Mary's in with a heart attack. And I felt like a failure as a GP, so I left general practice and decided to become an anesthesiologist. And I did 3 years of an anesthesia residency, and in my third year, I'm on the cardiovascular anesthesia service and at Vancouver General Hospital. And every day I'm putting people to sleep and watching surgeons open their chests and open the arteries in their heart and pulling this yellow guck out of their arteries called atherosclerosis, which is giving them the heart attacks and strokes. And there were already studies in the medical journals showing that this is the saturated fat and cholesterol largely. It's the fat of the animals these people are eating. And my father died of clogged arteries. I know I've got those genes. And the message was flashing because there was already studies showing that a plant-based diet can melt this plaque away out of the arteries. And so I'm getting the message to adopt a plant-based diet. And so I did. My body loved it. Within 12 weeks, a 10-kilo spare tire of fat around my waist melted away. My high blood pressure went to normal. My high cholesterol went to normal. I felt great waking up in a nice lean body every day. And at that point, I realized why all my patients were getting fatter and sicker from what they're eating every 4 hours. It's the food, it's the food, it's the food. And at that point, I decided I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist anymore and spend my career putting people to sleep. I'd rather go back to general practice and help them wake up, right? And so I did. I left, much to my parents' dismay, as I left an anesthesia residency just before finishing it, do you know the money you're giving up? But it was no longer in truth. I'm a GP at heart. And so I went back to general practice, found people in my area who would give plant-based cooking lessons, and sent my patients to them. And they experienced the same benefits that I did. They got leaner, their blood pressure came down, their cholesterol came down, and I could get them off these medications that they were told you must take these for the rest of your life. Nonsense. Not only can you get them off the blood pressure medication and the insulin, you have to get them off before their blood pressure crashes too low or their blood sugar goes down. So at that point, I became a plant-based physician. This was 40 years ago in 1981. And there's no going back. You can't unring the bell. This is clearly how to get people healthy. And when I give my presentations at the medical schools, I tell the young doctors, I'm the happiest doctor I know. My patients get healthy, unlike my cardiology colleagues. They're all going to need stents. They're all going to need bypass. That's right, doctor. If you don't talk to them about what they're eating, that's what you're going to see. But it doesn't have to be that way. You send them to a plant-based dietitian, get them on a plant-based diet, and these folks will turn into normal, healthy people right before your eyes. It's the most exciting kind of medicine to practice. So, yes, I had to pass through that gauntlet with my own health before the light went on. And as I said, at this point, you can't unring the bell. There's no going back at this point. I'm a plant-based doctor, and I want to share that with the young doctors coming out of medical school. They should be nutrition aware, diet aware as far as what their patients are eating as the causative agent why they're bringing these bodies to us, and overweight, diabetic, hypertensive, atherosclerotic, and inflamed. It's the food, doctor, and get them plant fueled, and they'll get healthy.
I think that works perfectly into actually the one paragraph that I found in your book that I absolutely love, and what you've just said very much resonates with that, which was we doctors have failed America terribly, and we've done with so stunning, almost criminal negligence. We have the capacity to reverse disease, and yet we run from it. We have the tools to increase longevity, but we leave them in the toolbox. We can show up for our patients to improve their health markers, health and quality of their lives. Yet we deem our patients incapable of utilizing the information. Incredibly, and most baffling, we often refuse to learn and utilize the information for ourselves. I guess as well, why is it then that doctors themselves don't utilize this information if they have the information, or is it just the kind of lack of nutritional knowledge that there is or was at that time? Because obviously there's nutritional knowledge everywhere now. We can have it, we have it, and there's studies everywhere, but people still don't, utilize it for themselves.
Yes, that's one of the great head-shaking phenomena that we're dealing with. That you would think doctors, who, if they are true seekers of truth, and they truly are. If a journal article comes out that such and such a drug is more effective than drug Y, they will immediately change their prescribing habits if they are convinced of the evidence and what's the truth of the situation, then that's what I'm going to follow. But when it comes to food, it's in a different category. First of all, you can't do a double-blind, placebo-controlled study on nutrition. People know what they're eating. You would have to, as the doctor said, well, show me a placebo-controlled, double-blind study showing that a plant-strong diet is healthier than a meat-based diet. Well, you would have to take 1,000 people, put 500 of them on a whole plant diet, put 500 of them on a meat-based diet. They have to eat the same foods every day for 20 years to see who dies and no one's going to do that study. Yeah, people know what they're eating. People change with their diet every day. And so it's unreal. So they say, well, that is nutrition stuff. It's all California woo-woo stuff. It doesn't make any difference. Because doctors are human. They like to taste the steak in their mouth. They like that fried chicken. And to think that they have to change their diet. That's the one thing for patients, something else for the doctor. And we're not taught anything about nutrition during medical school. So we get the message it's not important. And they're eating the same food themselves in the hospital cafeteria. They're eating the burgers and the pizza, etc. And also it's cultural. They say, well, I can't tell some South Indian patient what they should be eating. I can't tell some Hispanic patient what they should be eating. That's none of my business. Yes, doctor, it's your business. They all get the same heart attacks and strokes. So there's all these barriers and the doctors say, listen, it's enough for me to keep up with the latest pharmacology and the latest surgery advances. Don't talk to me about this nutrition stuff. It's pretty soft, squishy science. And so that's enough to just keep on keeping on, and it's sad, and it's more than sad, it's tragic. The people are every hour in the UK. How many people grab their chest and fall over with a heart attack and die from a preventable disease? No one should die of clogged arteries, but we're seeing this, and the type 2 diabetes. Yeah, it's a real crime, if I can use that word, against patients. It's a losing proposition. The patients lose the opportunity to reverse their disease. I wish someone had told me when I was a medical resident that diabetes is reversible, type 2 diabetes. I wish someone had told me that high blood pressure is reversible. These are reversible diseases. We get the opposite message, that high blood pressure, that you will take these pills the rest of your life. Insulin, diabetes, once on insulin, always on insulin, no one gets on. These are not true statements. We get people off high blood pressure pills all the time. As I said, you have to get them off. The same with insulin. And so there's this slow moving revolution happening in medicine as finally these truths are coming up to the surface. They say you can't keep a hat pin in a cloth bag for very long. The point comes out. And the same thing, the truth is these are reversible diseases. It's from the Western diet. Get these folks on a high plant predominant diet, and most of these diseases reverse and go away. It's the most important message that can be delivered in medicine. And that's what I'm doing with the rest of my career. I've delivered enough babies. I've fixed enough broken arms. I'm spending my time going to the nation's medical schools and giving a lecture of what I wish I learned in medical school about nutrition. And I spell out, here's how a plant-based diet reverses hypertension. Here's how a plant-based diet reverses type 2 diabetes. Somebody needs to tell the medical students this, so when they graduate, they are nutritional aware physicians that can start doing some intelligent counseling, or find a plant-based dietitian and refer their patients to them. When I give my lecture, I say, here's a new model of medical practice in your GP office. Be a good doctor, practice good medicine, take a medical history when you have a new patient, do a physical exam, order your labs, review the scans, make a diagnosis, get them on medicines if you need to. But before they leave, you hand them contact information. This is the contact information for Ms. Jones, Ms. Smith. They're a plant-strong dietitian. Make a telemedicine appointment. This works beautifully by telemedicine. You don't even have to be in the same office with them. But they will talk to you about getting your diet more plant-based. They'll give you handouts. They'll show you videos to watch. You eat like they're telling you to eat, and you come back and see me in a month. Let's see if you're not leaner and healthier. We'll talk about getting you off some of these medications. And I put this model in the young doctor's head so they can expand their practice to incorporate plant-based nutrition. And I say, you'll be the happiest doctor you know. I'm the happiest doctor I know. So, it's time for change in medicine. We're practicing medicine like from the 1950s. It's time to get into the 21st century and realize it's the food, it's the food, it's the food. There's diseases that aren't food-based, but the majority are, and we need to deal with that reality.
So when it comes to things like, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some of the autoimmune conditions, some of these very killer diseases, why is a whole foods kind of plant-based protocol a solid solution? What are these plants doing within the body to actually kind of intervene and kind of reverse these diseases, these chronic conditions? Because for some people, most people just think of a cucumber or a lettuce or something and just see it as nothing, or a tomato, or they just see it as something that you just pick up, but they don't realize it can do so much for the body. But what are these plants actually doing within the body to kind of actually reverse things?
Very sophisticated question. I invite your viewers to go to our website called movingmedforward.org, movingmedforward.org. And on that website, you'll see a video recording of the talk I give at the medical schools, what I wish I learned about nutrition in medical school. And we go into these various mechanisms, exactly how does a plant-based diet reverse these diseases. But in short, because that's a very sophisticated question you're asking, and it's what the young doctors want to know. Show me the science. How does this actually work? And we make it, it's very simple. When you're eating the standard Western diet full of meat and dairy and oil and sugars, after every burger, every bacon and egg breakfast, every fried chicken dinner, a red tide, I call it, floods through your tissues, bringing all sorts of toxic molecules, sugars that stick to proteins and oxidize them, fragments of animal muscle that set off immune reactions, free radicals from grilling the burgers and frying the chicken that rip electrons off your DNA. The Western diet is really toxic on so many levels. And we're doing it every 4 or 6 hours. We're flooding our tissues with this. And this sets the stage for the clogged arteries and high blood pressure and diabetes, etc. When one changes the food stream to a plant-based one, now every salad, every bowl of vegetable soup, every plate of steamed veggies now is flooding the tissues. I mean, you've taken away the red toxic tide there, and now every meal floods the tissues with these beneficial molecules that are antioxidant, that promote tissue repair, that neutralize free radicals, that stabilize the tissues. Everything changes. It's a high water content diet. All the soups and salads and steamed veggies and fruits are full of water. So now the blood is less viscous. A diet full of saturated fat it makes the blood thicker, and it's harder to push through capillary beds. You have to use a higher blood pressure. Well, now the blood is more free flowing on a plant-based diet from all the water in the soups and salads. And so there's a surge of nutrients and oxygen flowing through the capillary beds in the brain, the heart, the kidneys. A meat-based diet is full of inflammatory molecules that set off inflammation in the body. Well, you pull those out when you go plant-based, and now all the fats are coming from plant oils, many of which are in the omega-3 family that are anti-inflammatory. So you've changed the inflammatory balance in tissues throughout the body from a pro-inflammatory to an anti-inflammatory one. When you're eating the standard Western diet with a bunch of sugars and fried foods and oils, these molecules called free radicals, they're missing an electron, so they're like molecular terrorists that will rip an electron off your DNA. They're really destructive, and they're inherent in the Western diet. Well, you pull that out, and now all those colorful fruits and vegetables are colorful because they're filled with these polyphenol molecules that are antioxidant, neutralize these free radicals. So at every level, if you're eating meat and dairy, you're spawning in your gut a microbiome filled with Firmicutes bacteria that are nasty critters. They put out waste products that inflame the gut wall, make the gut more inflamed and leaky. Well, you pull that out, you pull the meat and dairy out, and now all the food material going through the intestines is plant-based, high fiber with resistant starches, and it fosters the growth of beneficial bacteria from the Prevotella family, and they're anti-inflammatory. In fact, they make molecules like oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine make you feel good. People's moods improve, and on every level, so you've changed the blood viscosity, you've changed the inflammatory balance, you've neutralized free radicals, you've changed the microbiome in the gut there. Everything changes in the body when you go from an animal-based food stream to a plant-based food stream. And they're beneficial changes, and we should rejoice and take advantage of that. So in the short answer of what changes when you go to from an animal-based food stream to a plant-based food stream, everything changes, and it's a different physiology, and it's a healthier one by far.
But then you have people from the other side of obviously you look at these carnivore doctors or high red meat doctors, and they're kind of like, hey, obviously red meat is the optimal way to get every single nutrient that you could ever need, especially like things like when you look at iron, when you look at kind of an abundance of different nutrients. However, I think it's very much more of a misconception, because I think we're taught from a very young age that, like, to get your iron in, red meat, but people don't want to move away from that logic.
No, they don't, and and a lot of it has to do with the food we were fed as kids. You know, your mother didn't know, my mother didn't know, and we were fed these meat and dairy products, and we were told, you know, that we need this; it's helpful. But in reality, well, we grow up into having heart attacks and strokes and cancers, etc. You know, it certainly wasn't a healthy diet to begin with. People raised as vegans have far fewer of these diseases, no doubt. But the carnivore guys, they're kidding themselves. It's embarrassing, especially if they have MD after the name, or and that well, you get everything you need. No, you don't. Red meat is deficient in vitamin C. Certainly, there's no fiber in meat, and there's trace minerals that aren't there. And they're trading on people's ignorance when they think that red meat equals iron. Well, yeah, first of all, I've never had a gorilla or a giraffe in my office with iron deficiency anemia. There's plenty of iron in plant foods. In America, we had a cartoon character named Popeye, the Sailor Man, and when he needed more strength to fight a battle there, what would he do? He'd open up a can of spinach and he would knock it back there. Of course, he was sponsored by the spinach producers, but the point is, of course, there's iron in dark green leafy vegetables, and that's where Popeye was getting his iron. And in fact, the iron that's in green vegetables is safer than red meat. The folks pushing of the red meat for iron and strength. The truth is that the iron that's in red meat is attached to a molecule of blood. It's heme iron, and it leaps into the human bloodstream. You can't keep it out. When you eat it, it all winds up in the bloodstream. Well, the problem is that iron is an oxidizing agent. If you've ever seen a metal car bumper rust, it rips electrons off other molecules. And you wind up with a condition called iron overload, which these red meat guys are finding out the hard way. And it ages your tissues. It causes like a biological rusting. And with plant-based iron, with the iron that's in green vegetables, the intestinal lining, once your iron stores are full up, your intestinal lining can keep more plant-based iron from entering the bloodstream. But the animal-based iron doesn't care. It just barges in, and you wind up with iron deposits in tissues throughout the body. As I said, it causes biological oxidation. It ages our tissues. They're trading on the public's ignorance about nutrition. There's no reason that the public should have to do this to know all about iron kinetics. But these guys, the scientists and the nutritionists who are pushing this, they should know better. And again, it's embarrassing and it's a little upsetting, to say the least, to see this nonsense so promulgated out there. People should not be gullible to fall for this line here. I'm glad we're talking about it now. But get your iron from plant foods, and you'll be fine. Turns out that the iron, they'll say, yeah, but it's harder to absorb the iron from plants. Yes, but you can increase the absorption of iron from plants with the addition of vitamin C. You can increase the absorption of plant-based iron by 6 times. So does that mean taking a vitamin C tablet with your salad? No, it means if you've got a helping of broccoli or greens on your plate, squeeze some lemon juice over it. If you're making spinach salad, throw some mandarin orange slices in there. Get that citrus and greens combo going. And only plants make vitamin C. And you'll be able to absorb all the plant-based iron that you need. So this idea that red meat equals strength, ironically, it can lead you to an early death or an early stroke. So get your iron out of plants. Ask Popeye, he knew.
There seems to be at the moment, obviously we're having the carnivore trend. We know it's happening, but there's also, I think this is also another thing that's probably only in the States. It doesn't seem to be over here as much, but it's the raw milk at the moment, doing a lot of raw milk. So how is that affecting, or how could that affect, obviously, the population? Because it seems to be growing, or at least I see it in the bubble that I may be in. So I don't know if the rest of the world's actually seeing that, or it's just I'm seeing it because I've been closed off into a bubble, I guess.
Right. So thanks to yeah, there's been a raw milk movement over here for years, but thanks to our new Health and Human Services Secretary, Mr. Kennedy Jr. there, he's a big advocate for raw milk. Well, first of all, consuming the milk of a cow is bizarre. I mean, you don't need the milk of a cow any more than you need the milk of a moose or a giraffe. There's nothing that you need. You get all the protein you need out of beans and grains, and the there's so many things in cow's milk that are problematic. If it's whole milk, it's full of fat. That mother cow wants to give her baby calf lots of fat and growth factors for to turn that little baby calf into a 600-pound dairy cow as rapidly as possible, and so that's fine for baby calf. But humans, all that saturated fat certainly is going to increase the risk of heart disease. The proteins are cow proteins, and they set off allergies and all sorts of immune problems. Um, but it's dirty stuff. I know I milked a lot of cows, and when the cows at night, they lay down to sleep, and they're often laying in their own manure. And so when you got them in the dairy barn, you look at you're about to put the milking machine on the cow's titties there. You see that it's caked with manure. You take a wet rag and you try and get off as much as you can. But inevitably, when you put the milker on there, some of that manure is going to wind up in the cow's milk. The cows with these big over-distended udders that they sit on get infected. They get a bacterial infection called mastitis. And so when you milk the cow, all the pus, the infections, immune cells in the cow's breast tissue there winds up in the milk. The bacteria wind up in the milk. It's dirty stuff. The dairy herd is largely infected with bovine leukemia viruses. That's in the milk. You look at this white stuff and you say, what is in there? And for them to be consuming this stuff, there's no question, you're going to see increased risk of increasing incidence of diarrheal diseases, salmonella, because they don't pasteurize the milk either. It's fresh raw milk. Because at least when you pasteurize it, you kill the bacteria, but not if it's fresh unpasteurized milk. And so we're going to be seeing an increase in everything from diarrheal diseases to I hate to say it, but whether we'll see if it contributes to cancerous diseases of various types through various mechanisms. It's dirty stuff meant for calves, and it's bizarre that people are following this trend. And I'm afraid they're going to learn the hard way as the truth of this shows up in medical journals, which it will.
Hmm. Where obviously with milk, it's going to be full of hormones, whether that be injected or just the estrogen from a mother cow. Obviously, when that's then ingested by a human, are those hormones actually playing around with like the human hormones as well? Because people worry about having tofu, but like let alone the cows.
Very important question. When I was living on my uncle's dairy farm, when a cow would become fertile, we would call the man from Badger Breeders, the artificial insemination folks. He'd come out. We would lock the cow in the stanchion. He would take a big long tube of bull semen and ram it up her vagina into her uterus, squeeze the bulb, and bull semen would come out. She would get pregnant, and if she had been giving milk, she within a few days she would dry up. She would stop lactating, and there's a biological reason why pregnant mammals they generally stop giving milk because if they just had well, the pregnant mammals usually don't lactate. I can go into the reason, but not necessarily right now. And if that when that happened, my uncle would pull out his little notebook, and bossy number 17 won't give milk till she has her calf in the spring, and he put circle the date. Well, we had 49 cows, and that's just the way it was. It's just biology. Well, today's modern dairy operations, they're milking 1,000 cows or more, twice a day. They can't afford to have their best milkers go offline for 9 months at a time while they're carrying their calf. So the cows, the dairy herds now have been genetically modified. They have GMO'd the cows, and now they will give milk, even though all through their next pregnancy, even though they're carrying their next calf, they're still giving milk. Well, any pregnant female mammal, her whole body is filled with estrogens. And human mothers know this. It makes their hair luxuriant, makes their breasts large. It saturates every tissue in the body, including the breast tissue. And so the estrogens get into the milk. And now they're sucking, the modern dairy operations are sucking milk off large, pregnant bovines. And the milk is filled with these estrogens. And as you're implying, these are not the puny little phytoestrogens in soy. These are official mammalian estrogens. They are estrone, estradiol, estriol, pregnadiol, progesterone. These are official mammalian estrogens, and they are biologically active. And they can, in the male body, gives guys man boobs, but more importantly, it makes the prostate gland unstable. It increases the risk of prostate cancer. The more dairy products a boy eats in his young years, the higher his risk of developing prostate cancer as an adult man. Certainly in the female body, it increases the incidence of breast lumps, makes the uterus get big, and the women have heavy periods, and they get these benign tumors called fibroids. They bleed down to anemias, and so the surgeon says, you got fibroids, and lay down my operating table and take your uterus out. For what? For consuming the milk of a cow. This is bizarre. So yes, they are biologically active estrogens. Unlike the unfair rap that's been given on soy products. Oh, you got phytoestrogens. You're going to make your son gay if you give him tofu, but it turns out that the phytoestrogens in soy not only won't give a woman breast cancer, it's protective against breast cancer. It occupies the receptor cells on the breast tissue that keep the problematic estrogens out. Actually, the women who consume soy products have a lower incidence of breast cancer. So all the way around, again, the red light's flashing. Humans, you are plant eaters. Stop sucking the milk off cows. Stop eating their flesh. Get your food out of the garden, and the surgeons will have a lot less business there. So you're absolutely right. The estrogens are problematic.
Mm. There was part of your book where you mentioned the blueberry versus the pig, and that your body does actually recognize where your food is coming from and whether it be a plant or an animal. I think for a long time, I was always under the impression, whereas obviously if you were to break down amino acids, for instance, it wouldn't care if it came from obviously a chickpea or a beef, or didn't know the difference. It was just looking for the amino acids. But so your body does actually recognize where these things are coming from, whether it be plant or animal?
Absolutely. In that, my friend and colleague, Dr. Callum Campbell, wrote a book entitled Whole, WHOLE. And he says that's the point is, we become now so focused on how much carnitine is in this and how much creatine and how much B6. He says that your body doesn't work like that. All that matters is the quality of the whole food stream that's coming through every meal. What's the quality of that meal? And those amino acids don't come in little packages clearly marked tyrosine and lysine. They come in. If they're from an animal, they come in with a slurry of saturated fat and concentrated proteins and all the contaminants that animal ate because now the meat comes from these factory farm installations, and they're fed bushels of grains that are sprayed with herbicides and pesticides. At least in the States here, they're given antibiotics and hormones as growth promoters, and all that floods through the tissues. And to be focusing on, well, how much amino acids there, you're overlooking the important thing. What's the whole food stream? What's its message to the body? And if it's from animal flesh, then you're going to get a whole different biological response. And uh, the animal fats alone are full of arachidonic acid that's pro-inflammatory. So it's an inflammatory version of the food stream. So on every level, for them just to focus, well, this amino acid, that amino acid, it matters the whole package that brought those amino acids in. And there's a big difference between an animal-based food stream and a plant-based food stream we already talked about. So again, it's a distraction to just talk about, well, this amino acid is the same as that amino acid. How was it delivered to the body is what really matters, of course.
Mm. Your focus is obviously trying to heal people through plants. And I know this is going to sound like a very controversial idea or very conspiratorial, but I feel like, especially in comparison to other countries around the world, it does seem like there's a financial disincentive, I guess, in the States to actually obviously have a sicker population because it's then more profitable, and obviously for the medical industry, insurance companies. Would you say from like your stance that is the case? Because it doesn't seem, obviously, for a lot of people, having a commission from a drug is more appealing than obviously healing somebody. Because obviously there's that financial incentive to kind of be like, hey, I can get this person on statins for the rest of their life instead of giving them an intervention where they're eating, better food.
Well, sir, you've really put your thumb on the major problem, of course. And money, money's wonderful. It lets you buy your groceries. But when it's moving on an industrial scale with the purpose of generating more money, which is what capitalism is kind of about here, yes, then the whole structure of whatever it is, whether it's the transportation industry or the insurance industry or the medical industry, it starts getting big money distorts the entire mechanism, absolutely. And people are finding out, the hospitals, etc., you make money off of doing things to people, doing procedures. The more operations we do, the more stents we place, the more money we're going to make. And the insurance companies are part of it. You would think, and I was naive enough, and I've written this in the book, that the insurance companies will be allies because if people get healthier, the insurance companies will have to pay out less money for operations and claims. I thought there would be an incentive. But it turns out that the whole structure has been so distorted that the only thing that matters is the number of patients that sign up with that company and the premiums that they pay, which is why the insurance companies keep raising the premiums, because they're going to make more and more profit. That's where their profit comes from. So they're not really interested in keeping people healthier. That's going to decrease their profits. And so we've got major work to do here. The game is really distorted. And so the best thing to do, of course, is stay as far away from the medical system as you possibly can. Keep yourself so healthy you don't wind up in an emergency room or on an operating table. And knowing how reversible most of these diseases are, reverse your own high blood pressure, reverse your own type 2 diabetes. And it'll happen with a healthy, low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet. And you don't even need your doctor's permission or guidance. I tell my patients here, call your doctor's office. You don't just leave a message with the nurse that you've adopted a whole food, plant-based diet. You don't even say, I'm eating healthier. And tell the doctor that. And would he work with me or she work with me if my medicines become too strong and need to be reduced? Just let the doctor know that that's what's happening and that they're going to be reducing medication, and then get on with becoming whole food, plant-based yourself. And you'll find these medicines will exit your life, and so hopefully will your doctor's visits. And And if you get in the hospital, get out of there as soon as you possibly can. But I'm waiting for a vegan insurance executive to start their own company and really set it up so the healthier people get, the more money they make, and the lower the premiums go. There must be a way to structure it in that way, and so hopefully someone in your audience listening to this say, "Hey, that might work there." So yeah, that's a major issue that's perpetuating our problem that we have to take into account as we plan our strategies here. Yeah.
Oh, so you really run yourself out of money, just not advocating for statins, and like obviously doing a whole foods plant-based diet is so much cheaper, but doesn't have that financial incentive. So you could have sold out.
Indeed, indeed. On every level, the food is cheaper, the people are healthier, the planet is healthier. Everything benefits from going to a plant-based diet. And so, again, it's podcasts like yours that are making people think and start taking their own health into their own hands. Um, the young people are very concerned about their ecological futures. Well, they need to understand that it's the burger that they're eating is why they're cutting down the rainforest and why the rivers are running dry and why the temperature's getting hotter. And if we go to a plant-based diet, the forest will come back, and as trees grow, they take carbon dioxide out of the air and turn it into solid wood. It reverses global warming. The rivers will run clean again. The soil will stop eroding. And everything will get better. And so I want one of my hopes. If they say, what gives you hope these days? Young people and the internet give me hope. If the message goes out, stop eating that stuff, that's what's killing us. The animal-based diet is what is destroying our future. Stop eating that stuff. If that word gets out and people stop buying it in the supermarkets and stop ordering it in the restaurants, it's all you need to do. That's where we have our most powers, when you're pushing that cart trolley down the aisle of the supermarket, deciding what goes in that basket to come home. If you don't put the meat in the basket and the dairy in the basket, it's going to change the economics. We need to exercise our power there. And I tell folks, when you're in the restaurant, every time you turn to the wait person, I'll have the beef, I'll have the lamb, I'll have the chicken. Every time you say those words, your children's world gets a little hotter, a little drier, a little deader. We've used meat eating up. We've used fishing up. No matter what flesh eating served the human purpose in history, doesn't matter. That age is over. Turn the page. The Mother Nature saying, oh, human beings, you want to keep living on this planet, adopt a plant-based diet. Okay, the bell is ringing, and we need to answer that bell by changing our food choices. And again, thank you for getting this word out. You're one of the agents of change here that we all have to take advantage of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think looking forward, like let's say in the next 20 to 30 years, are you kind of hopeful, or do you think there is that kind of change in the shift in how we eat as a global population? Or because obviously in the States at the moment it's very much all over the place, and obviously there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation everywhere. However, in the next 20, 30 years, do you think there is going to be that planetary shift towards a more plant-based diet?
Do I, there's nuances in that question. Do I hope so? Absolutely. Do I believe it? Yes, I have faith in people, especially, again, young people on the internet. Good ideas can flash around the world in 2 mouse clicks. And humanity has the power now to make smarter choices. And hopefully enough people of your age group will stand up and shout loud and clear. It's time to evolve our diets to a plant-based diet. And as that starts happening, the economics will change, the ecology, the politics will change. We need to elect the people to our respective legislatures in Congress and in the Parliament who have this awareness of the importance of plant-based diets. We've got a couple of vegans in our United States Senate. And so if we change our buying habits and change our voting habits absolutely, we can cast a different future for ourselves, and I'm betting on that. I'm 78 years old. I've had a wonderful life here, but we owe it. My generation owes it to yours. To we've messed up the world pretty badly here, but we at least owe you a vision of a stable, healed world, and it starts with changing our diet. And so, yes, I'm hopeful the truth of that will get out. Plus, uh, people love animals. It's time to stop killing them billions every year. What right do we have to inflict death on such an industrial scale on these innocent creatures? And enough young people are finally waking up to that. And if we don't buy it, then that industry will disappear as well. So, yes, I'm hopeful that next 20 or 30 years, and hopefully sooner than that, the changes we're going to need to make will actually come to pass. So, again, thanks for being part of that change.
For the average person or the listener who is, kind of on the fence, they're still eating meat, they're still having dairy, but they're more plant forward. What are the three things they should cut out their, diet, and the three things they should probably add more into that diet?
Very good question. What should they say? Stop the dairy. I mean, nobody needs the milk of a cow for any reason. And nowadays, at least in the States, there are so many plant-based versions. There's plant milks, oat milk, soy milk, rice milk, hemp milk. There's plant-based cheeses, plant-based yogurts. Get rid of the actual cow dairy products and go to plant-based versions of that. What should they add to their diet? Beans and greens, beans and greens, beans and greens. And by that, I mean the entire legume family. Where are you going to get your protein on a plant-based diet? From the legumes, pulses, beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils. They should be every day. Hummus sandwich, bean burrito, bean chili, lentil stew. There's so many ways, and all these wonderful ethnic dishes, the curries and the dals and the chilies. Lots of ways to get legumes and pulses into your diet. And green vegetables are God's gift to us. They are filled with proteins and vitamins and minerals and fiber and iron, magnesium, potassium. So have something green on your plate at least once a day. And have a big salad over there. We need fresh vegetables. You can't eat everything all cooked and steamed there. You want something fresh every day. So have a big salad every day. And when we make a salad, we'll all throw in lots of fresh veggies. Then we'll open up a can of beans or chickpeas and put it on the salad there, and ways to really increase the nutritional value. So yank out the dairy, add the beans and greens, and you'll be much healthier for it.
That's amazing.
Choose the bean chili instead of the beef chili.
Dr. Michael Klaper, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. For the people that want to find out more, want to buy your book, want to find you on Instagram or a website or wherever, where can people go to find you? Where can people go to find your book?
Thank you so much. Go to Amazon. It's already on Amazon, even though the hard copies won't be available till April. If you Google Moving Medicine Forward, you can pre-order. So you'll get it at the lowest possible price, and it would help Amazon lower their price. So definitely go to Amazon and look for Moving Medicine Forward. But go to our website, movingmedforward.org. And there you'll see everything that we're doing to educate the medical profession as well as the public. And I've got my own private website, drklaper.com. You can also see that as well. We've got articles and videos on that. And so I'm easy to find. Just do a search on my name, and these will show up.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you greatly. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. You're an excellent interviewer, and I wish you and your audience the best of health and happiness in the years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.